Sure.
Okay, welcome everybody. Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the abridged code of Jewish law. So we're in the middle of chapter 45. Chapter 45, Siman Mem Hey, the laws of the Zimun, making a Zimun a introduction, invitation, formal invitation to the grace after meals. And we're up to number 9. Teves. Okay, so we said ideally the person who leads the invitation, he should make the blessing over a cup of wine and then drink it afterwards. So, Tes imavarch eina roitze lishtois. The person who is leading the benching, the grace after meals, he doesn't want to drink the wine. So what happens now? Well, two opinions. Yesh ayimrim diachlitain leish achem in asubim shavarch bar pigofen v'yishte shirvis varch barchroina. One opinion is he can give it to someone else who is part of the benching, someone else in the group, and that other person makes the blessing bar pigofen on the wine, drinks it, and then makes an after blessing. The yesh omrim the ein lasses kain, and there's another opinion that he can't do that. Rather, specifically, the person who leads the benching, who makes the formal invitation, that person has to drink the wine. And that's appropriate to do this, to follow this. So in the first instance, it should be the same person who leads the benching who drinks the wine or grape juice afterwards. And I guess if you're stuck, all of a sudden he realizes that he can't, then we give it to someone else. Okay, Yud, number 10. You got two people ate together. So if we remember, we said the formal invitation is only if there's 3 or more people who ate together. That's when you make a formal invitation. So if you have 2 people who ate together, mitzvah labakesh shlishi v'starfim bezimun. There's a mitzvah, in other words, it's not one of the 630 mitzvahs, but in other words, what it means is that it's appropriate. It's a good thing that they should invite a third person to come and eat with them so they can have this blessing. Now, that doesn't mean when you're eating in your house, every time you eat, you have to run out to the street and bring someone else in to come eat with you. But it means, for example, if a person's eating in a restaurant or maybe they're in the park in a Jewish area, it's nice. It's good to call someone else in. Whoop, I pressed the wrong button. 2 people come in to make a third. Now, you got 2 people that ate, and the third person joins them. Now, even if he joins them after they've essentially finished the meal, but as long as they're not totally full, right? So they would add, if someone brings something, let's say for dessert or something, they'd be able to eat it. So it's not like they finished the meal. So for mitzvah leihem, the sarf is the shlishi lezimun. It's appropriate. It's good for them to invite this third person to join. Now, lo echel kazayis, and how do they do this? They give him a kazayis, it's about a fluid ounce of bread, something to eat. Just chayiv a bracha chroina, so he now becomes obligated in the after blessing. So those who just joined us, chapter 45, Siman Mem Hey, we're in the middle of Yud, number 10. You'd start from him, he can join with them. So that's according to this first opinion, as long as he eats something with them. But yesh omrim, but there are those that say that in other words, there's a view in halacha. The be'inan dafka pas, the person has to particularly eat bread. Yesh omrim, and then some say the sagigam shamini dagon. Well, others say it doesn't have to be bread. He could eat some other grain product. So what we call mazonis. So if he had some cake with them, the third person only had cake, or he had something like that. For yesh omrim, then there's even another opinion that this third person, even if he just ate fruit or vegetables, that's good enough. And there's even yet a more lenient opinion, the fila ein oichel, even if the third person did not eat anything. But rather he drank a revius, 86 mils of a drink, chutz min hamayim, excluding water. So mitzdaref, he could join them. B'chein the hagim, and this is the accepted custom, he says. I'm not sure the accepted custom really today is someone only drank, but definitely if they only had mazonis, and if they had something else, we could rely on it. V'afa pishla achol el shase. So it says that we would not. He's saying, but I don't think that if a person only drank and they didn't eat, he could still say the words she'achanu, right? Because in the invitation, he invites everyone, and they respond. And part of what they respond is she'achanu, we ate. So why could drinking be considered eating? Drinking is considered a subcategory of eating. That's why on a fast day, when the prohibition is to eat, person also can't drink. And then after the person leading the benching concludes the first blessing of Hazanas Hakol, or Yavarech Bracha Chroina, as Yavarech es Bracha Chroina, then that third person who didn't eat bread will make the after blessing for whatever they ate. Al-mash achal shasa, the appropriate blessing for whatever he happened to eat or drink. Now, that's if we bring him while we're still ready to eat, knows we haven't finished our meal. So he joins us when we haven't yet finished. But if the third person only joins us after we washed our fingers for the end of the meal, no, we can't join with us, because by washing our fingers at the end of the meal, that has finished the meal. So it doesn't matter that he eats now, even if we wait for him, because we finished. Okay, number 11. Three people who ate together. Since the fact that they ate together obligated them to have this formal invitation to the benching to the grace after meals, they're not allowed to separate before they bench together. Now, it's not only three. Same if you have 4 or 5 people, they shouldn't split up. Even for one of them to bench on his own, right? In other words, let's say you have 5 people. Let's keep it simple. 5 people. And one person leaves. He's not affecting the group, the rest of the group. The rest of the group still has 3 or more. So they can make the blessing. They can make the formal invitation to benching. He hasn't messed them over, but he's messed himself up. Because since he was part of the group, he's also obligated to have this formal invitation. So even an individual from the group shouldn't bench on his own. Should call him this chayv bezimun, because every one of them individually has become obligated to have this invitation to benching. Now, if there's 6 or more in the group, but less than 10, then Yechol Mechalik. Then they could divide into 2 groups. Why? Because each group will still be large enough to have the invitation. Because you can still have groups. So let's say there was 8 people, and divide up into a group of 5 and a group of 3. It's no problem, because each group has at least 3, and they can make them a Zoom. So that's only if they didn't yet reach 10. So number 12, asara. But if there's 10 people ate together, this chayvul avarach b'shem. Now the situation changes, because not only do they have to make a formal invitation to the benching, formal starting blessing, they also now mention God's name. Because we know when 10 Jews are together, the Shekhinah is there. So they're obligated to make this, say Hashem's name. The Hainish Mavarech Oimer, how does the process work? So when the one leading the benching says, instead of saying Navarech Shechanim Shaloi, that instead of saying we bless of whose we've eaten, he says Navarech Elokeinu Shechanim Shaloi. Let us bless our God. He adds in our God of whose food we've eaten. He doesn't say bless to our God. He says let's bless our God. And the other people who's part of the group who are replying, they reply, blessed is our God of whose we've eaten. Right? They also add in Hashem. So now, since they need to bless with Hashem's name, they shouldn't break up into smaller groups. So although when you had 9, you could break up into 2 or even 3 groups, no problem. Each one would have 3, because each group would be no different than if they're all together. But once you hit 10, they can't divide up. Unless you got 20 or yoiser or more. As then you can divide up. Because then each group could bless with Hashem's name. Okay. Any questions so far? All right. Yeah, David.
When we say it's a mitzvah, do we mean it's an obligation mitzvah, or it's a mitzvah like a good deed mitzvah that you're allowed to do?
No, we mean now the person, that's what they need to do. It's not a mitzvah like the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah, but it means now he has an obligation to do it. This is the appropriate thing to do. Okay, 13. Imta hamazamim basara. Now, he had 10 people there, and they made a mistake. Not only he made a mistake, also the people answering made the same mistake. What was the mistake? They forgot to mention Hashem's name. So now what happens? So you can't redo it. It's too late. Because you technically fulfilled the obligation, your requirement of having invitation. You did it wrong, but you did it. Or rephrase that, you didn't do it in the best way or the most appropriate way, but the invitation happened. So you've fulfilled your obligation, but you missed out on the mitzvah to mention Hashem's name. And this comes into the category, this is a Talmudic term. So literally it means a twisted thing that can't be straightened. And it's a verse in Koheles, in the one of the 5 Megillas, and so the whole thing is very poetic and symbolic, but it means certain mistakes that once you make a mistake, you can never fix it. So we use this term. It's twisted and it can't be straightened. Now that's if we did the whole mezuman, we did the whole formal invitation, and afterwards we realize, whoops, we didn't say Hashem's name. What happens though if we're in the middle? If the responders haven't responded yet, so the person leading, he left out Hashem's name, but no one responded yet. So since you did not yet fulfill the mitzvah of this zimun, of this formal invitation, because that mitzvah is only fulfilled once everyone answers, Then Yachsim Avaksim Hashem, he can go back. So either he remembered, whoops, I left out Hashem's name, or someone reminds him before everyone answers, then you go back and fix it. Now, we said we need 10. 10 people ate together. Now, do they all have to have eaten? What's the requirement for the 10? So number 14 is going to give us the requirement. So just like by the 3, we only needed 2 who ate bread, and the third one needed to have something. So how does it work with the 10? Number 14. Im shiva achlopas. If 7 ate bread, so to have a mezuman with Hashem's name, to have a minyan, we need, of the 10, at least 7 ate bread. Shloisha achlopeirus, and the 3 have to have eaten something. So when we say fruit, it doesn't have to be fruit. They could add mezuzah, but fruit's quite lenient. Or shasa mashkin, or even they just drank. But they have to have eaten or drunk enough that they need to make an after blessing. So if they had one little taste, that doesn't count. So if we've got 3 that are benching, 3 that ate bread, and they're going to bench and going to say the Birchas Hamazon, the large grace after meals, and 3 others then, or less, if we had more than 7 or 8, but the rest of the minyan are people that ate something and have to make some after blessing. Yachlazam B'Shem. That group can combine together, and they can do the mezuman. They can do this formal invitation with Hashem's name. Now, although when it came to the third person, when we only did 3, there was a dispute whether drinking was nuf. When it comes to the 10, bekan kuli alma moida the sagya samashka. Here, everyone agrees that only having fruit or drinking is good enough. And as well as that, there's a mitzvah to try and chase after the 10. Right? So if you, meaning, let's say you had 8 people eating together, and there's some other people, we'll just use a simple example, people having a picnic or something, a barbecue in the park, and there's 8 people, and you see, not so far away is another few Jews. So it's not just okay, we ate, they ate, so we don't have obligation. No, it's a mitzvah. It's ideal that we should come and ask them to join us, so we can bless with Hashem's name. But if only 6 people ate bread, right? Remember we said we need minimum 7. See, you might think 6 would be good enough because 6 is the majority of the minyan, and for many other things, 6, is good enough. The majority of a minyan. But when it comes to here, it doesn't help. It doesn't help us. 6 isn't sufficient that we can bless, say the Mezun Hashem's name, because a simple majority is not enough. We need a distinctive, an overwhelming majority, a recognizable majority. So 7 of 10 is you see, well, that's clearly the majority.
Rebbe,
Yeah.
where do we have 6?
6 would be, let's say you're davening, and to make a minyan, you need at least 6 people who are davening. Or if you have increased the Torah, and the other people,
davening.
you still need 4 people who are making up the
Right.
minyan, but 6 who are filling the obligation, or to read the Torah. So if 6 people didn't hear it yet, 6 people didn't fill the obligation.
Right. Shkoyach.
Yeah. All right, 15. So once we eat together as a group, the obligation starts, and we can't divide up or leave. So what's called eating together? Kolsh achol b'yachad. Any time people were together eating, even if they didn't eat the entire meal together. Elish yashul echol rather they just sat down, they made hamoitzi. Even though each person has his own bread. So you don't even have to be deliberately having a meal together. Just the fact is, 3 people sat down. Since they started the meal together, whether we're talking about the regular mezuman of 3 people or the one with Hashem's name, we have 10 people. Once they started, it's not appropriate. They're not allowed to separate. If one person wants to finish first, I ate faster than everyone else, I'm done. Everyone else is schmoozing. I want to go already. It's still not right. You're not allowed to separate. So therefore, so we mentioned that, so that person needs to go or wants to go. He can bench and he can do the invitation, the others can bench afterwards. But anyway, that's if they started the meal. So if they never started together, right? They didn't sit down together in the beginning. But rather after two people began to eat. Even though they'd only eaten a small amount. And a third person came by and he sat down at the same table. So then it depends. If they finished the meal at the same time, now he's obligated to bench with them and have the mezumin. But this third person, he just sits down, right? Those two guys are having a long meal. Third person got nothing to do with him, sits down, he eats quickly, he's done. Since he didn't start with them and he didn't finish with them, he's allowed to separate and do benching on his own. Nevertheless, it's appropriate, it's ideal. No, it's not obligation, but it's an ideal for this person to wait and to bench together with the others. All right. So that's the regular circumstances. Imhu oinus. There's an oinus. An oinus means something beyond his control. He's forced. He can't wait. Yeah, you're right. He should really wait till the other two finish. It's going to be 20 minutes, and he should bench them. But he can't, for whatever reason. He's late for work. Or he's worried he's going to suffer a financial loss if he doesn't leave now. Then even if he started the meal with him, he is allowed to finish his meal first, and he can bench on his own. But if it's not a real pressing need, then he should be strict with himself, and he shouldn't leave them. Okay. So now we said what we should do. Now we're going to mention if we make a mistake. Number 16. 3 people ate together. And you know what happened? One of them forgot. And he benched on his own. He forgot to make a mezumin. And he just benched. So now what do? They can still bench together. They can make a mezumin after this person's finished. And he also answers. However, if he just joined with two others to say the mezumin, he can't participate with them anymore. Because so when they sat down and they ate together and that formalized their eating together, so then it helps. But if you had two and a third person just joined, and then one of them, him, one of the others forgot, it doesn't help. And if two of the original benched, they forgot, then it's gone. You lost the opportunity. Okay, number 17. We've got 3 people ate together. So we know they have to make the mezumin, they have to make this formal invitation to benching. And what happened is like this. Two of them finished eating, and they want to bench. They want to say the grace after meals. And the third guy, he's still going. He doesn't want to bench now. There's still half a pot of cholent. He's going for it. So what do we do now? He has to interrupt his meal so they can say they can bench the mezuman. V'yane gamhu imohim, and he answers the invitation with them. The yaitzi deizum, fulfilling his obligation of the mezuman of the form invitation. The yamtim achisam avarach hazanas ekol, and he waits until they finish the first blessing of hazanas ekol. And once they've done that, after they can go back to eating. And he doesn't need to make a new before blessing, because he still had intention to eat. And when he finishes eating, he concludes. So it's just important to point out, if he was planning to bench with them and just changed his mind, then he's going to need to make a new before blessing. It's only because he never intended to bench. He never intended to finish his meal. That's why he can keep going with our shnayim. But if it's the other way around, two people want to continue eating, and there's only one person who wants to bench. They don't have to stop their meal for one person. But if they want, they can go beyond the letter of the law, and they can do it. So, and this is generally the accepted practice. If there's a group of three and one person needs to go, whatever it is, so he can bench, and he does the invitation. The other two wait until he's done, or at least the invitation, and then they keep going. So that's with three. Now we discuss the same situation with 10. If you have 10 people ate together, 4 of them have to interrupt their meal for the 6. Shema Roiv. So in other words, in each of these situations, the only time the rest of the people are obligated to interrupt their meal to answer, to respond to the invitation of the other people, is when it's the majority who wants to bench now. So one person, when it was 3, one person had to stop or pause his meal to answer for 2. When it's the other way around, one person wants to bench and 2 don't, well, then if they want, they can stop, but they're not obligated to stop. So here the same thing when we have 10. When the majority wants to bench, so you got 6, then the other 4 have to pause. Now, how long do they have to wait for? Only until after the invitation. And soon as they finish the invitation, they go, when they complete the meal, is Hamla Atzmim, please cause a shame, they make their own mezuman, regular one, without saying Hashem's name. Okay. 18. Okay. Tildas Gedoylus. Shahar Besmukim Sham. Large meals. There's lots of people there. So let's use an example, a wedding. You got a wedding, and there's 200 guests, let's say. So what happens? You should choose someone with a very strong voice, very loud voice, to lead the benching. So all the people who are participating and are going to answer can hear him. Today they usually use microphones. So but not if it's a large Shabbos meal. That doesn't help. Can't use microphone Shabbos. So at the very least, he should say aloud until the end of the first blessing. Now, if it's a very large room and the person is no one with a loud enough voice then people can break into their own groups of 10 and 10 and 10. And that way they'll be able to hear. So even though there's a concept of doing a mitzvah with as many people as possible, that's only when you can actually do it. If you're not going to be here anymore, then it's more important to break into smaller groups and actually be able to hear and respond properly. All right. Number 19. You got two groups eating in the one house. So it doesn't have to be a house. In a restaurant, kosher restaurant, got one group on one table, another group on another table. Batim, or they're in two houses. Okay, most houses today you can't see into each other's house like this. You're not so good, but it might be no. It's a nice summer's day and everyone's eating on the back porch and you can see each other. So if you can see each other, start from the Zoom, you can join together, make one Zoom, one invitation, become one group. Them love, but if you can't see each other, each group benches on their own and does their own invitation themselves. But if there's one waiter for both groups, right? So you're at a wedding, let's say, and it could be, you see people on the next table, but you don't see people 10 tables down, whatever it is, but you got the same waiters. That the waiters join you together as one group. Now, when does this apply? This is only when they initially decided to eat together. So not to make you went to a restaurant and was a total stranger there. We're talking about now, and you never any intention to eat with the guy. And as a matter of fact, you have no interest, and maybe you don't even want to eat with the guy. But a wedding is a good example because everyone came with the intention to eat together, eat the meal together, and we're combined by the waiters, even though we don't see each other. So that's how it works. Any situation we have where the groups, two or more groups, are going to join together, they all have to hear the leader, at least until the completion of the first blessing. Okay. 20. Someone who's together with people making mizum. So he didn't eat. He happened to no, he was just again, let's use the wedding example. Let's makes simchas. It's always nice. So he just went in to say Mazel Tov. So he's walking into the hall. He's going to shake the people's hands and say Mazel Tov. Just as he walks in, they're benching. So on the one hand, they're making this formal invitation. They're blessing Hashem. So it's inappropriate for him not to join in because it looks like he doesn't want to bless Hashem. On the other hand, though, they're blessing Hashem for the food they ate, and he didn't eat. So how can he join in? So what does he do? So let's see what's going on here. Number 20. Mishal Eitzel Mavarchim Mezumin. He happens to be together in a place where people are making the Mezumin, they're making this formal invitation. He didn't eat with them, he didn't drink with them. Right? He didn't have anything. So when he hears the person say, let us bless him, or if he adds in our God, if it was 10, that let us bless of who we eaten, so he can't respond like everyone else is. Yeah, we'll bless what we ate because he didn't eat. Ainahu, instead he responds, Baruch HaMavorach Shemai Tamei Lo'ilam Void, which means blessed is he, blessed is his name forever and ever. So he adds, so he does bless Hashem, but he doesn't bless the food we ate because he didn't eat. And if there was 10 people, and therefore the person leading the invitation says God's name. Oinagamhu, he also answers with God's name. What does he say? Baruch Elokeinu, Baruch Shemai Tamid Lo'elavod. Blessed is our God, and blessed is his name forever and ever. So he still joins in the blessing, but he doesn't bless the food that was eaten. Now, in the Mezuman, we have the leader say something, everyone responds. Then the leader says something, and everyone responds. In other words, it's twice. This leader saying something and the response happens twice. So what we just said now is if he's there for the first one. But let's say again, he's just walking the same milestone of the wedding, and he walks in. They've already done the first response, and it's now the second time. So the imbal achash kava amavarach navarach. He comes in after the first time the leader says something and responded. But shmei oynim oymrim, and he just hears the response. Baruch shechanu v'chulu, or baruch elokein shechanu. Then he can't respond. So oyno achareim amen. He just says amen. He can't say nothing because they're blessing God, and he stands there, looks like he doesn't want to bless God. But he also can't say anything because he can't respond to something he didn't hear. So he just says amen to what everyone else says. They're blessing Hashem for the food, and he says amen, which amen meaning I agree. I agree with his blessing. Okay, 21. Every 3 people ate, but they ate their own bread. Right? Each one's brought their own sandwich. And one of them is eating bread made by a non-Jew. And the other 2 are very careful not to eat bread made by non-Jews. So we discussed in an early chapter when we could be lenient and different things. So in other words, although they're eating together, but the majority would not eat the food. They would not partake of the food that the third person's eating. Nevertheless, they still are considered one group for this formal invitation. And the one who ate the bread that had the lowest standard of kashrus, he should lead the benching. Why? Because he's able to eat with the others. In other words, he would eat their bread. Right? If he's eating this lower standard of kashrus, he would for sure eat the higher standard. So since he would technically eat his bread as well as theirs, it's appropriate that he's the one that says us. While the others who wouldn't eat the other person's, it's hard for them to include him. Likewise, if people are eating dairy, you got one person eating dairy, and 2 are eating meat. So normally, right, you can't eat meat and milk in the same meal. And here you have 2 eating meat and 1 eating dairy, or vice versa. Mitzdarfin, they still combine as a group, even though they can't eat each other's food. And we say the one who ate the dairy, he should lead the blessing. Why? Because he's also able to eat with the others. In other words, he could finish the dairy, and then afterwards he could have meat relatively soon. But the people at meat have to wait a long time before they could have dairy, so they can't join in with him afterwards. But however, if the one who's eaten dairy does not drink wine, or there's only beer, which is the New Year's, so he can't have it yet. And he's careful not to have the Chodesh. There's different opinions outside of Israel. I mean, generally speaking, we don't. Outside of Israel, it's not an issue, but the people who, as a custom, take it on. Then someone had the meat, should bench. It's better to do that than to not bench over wine. Kasha, but if one of them ate hard cheese, so hard cheese means age 6 months or more. You also have to wait 6 hours, like you do for after meat. Shnayim boss and 2 had meat, so then there's no way they could join. So now it's a matter of dispute. Those who say that they can't join together as one group from a Zuman because they could never eat together. Well, another opinion says at the end of the day, so they ate their own food. Why? In theory, they could eat the same bread. So if this happens, we could be lenient, we could bench, can make a mezuman, but something we should try and avoid. And just as a side point to this, if there's 3 people eating together, or even 2 people, nothing to do with mezuman now, some people are having dairy and some people are having meat, you have to have different tablecloths, or you have to put something in between, because you don't want people just out of familiarity, taking things from each other's plate, and then they'll, God forbid, mix milk and meat together, which would be, Okay. 22. Noshim she'achlu ima noshim she'chamizumin. You have women ate together with the men, and the men need to do mizumin. So in this chayvu gamhena, they also become obligated. Tzrichas shmoya bichas mizumin, and they should also listen to the formal invitation, and they should answer. Cotton nahagim shem istarfim mizumin. A child, though, under bar bas mitzvah, the custom is that he can't join in. Achu ben Yud Gimel until he is 13. Shana v'yom echad, he's 13 one day. Knows he's b'mitzvah. As mitzaref yochel varach gam hu mizumen, then he joins, he becomes part of the group, and he can also lead. Afa pishlo nivdak im hevi saris. Even though we haven't checked them, just to give some background information. So there's 2 aspects to being bar bas mitzvah. So one is the age. One person to be bas mitzvah, a girl has to be 12 years, and a boy to be bar mitzvah has to be 13 years. But then there's also they have to have a certain physical maturity, and the sign of that is they have 2 pubic hairs. So anything that's a Torah obligation, we need to make sure that they have 2 pubic hairs. Something that's rabbinical, so let's say davening with a minyan. So we can have a chazan just who's 13, and we don't need to check if he has 2 hairs. Benching now is from the Torah. So seemingly, before we get people worried, we don't start checking people. When to be a witness at a wedding, we don't make people, remove their pants to check if they are physically mature enough. So generally, what we do is it's a general rule that people don't grow a beard before they've developed, till they have hair lower down. So for something that's a Torah obligation, we generally only see people who are growing a beard. They have a beard. Even if they would shave or something, at least we can see that they have what to shave, and then we know that they've matured. But something that's rabbinic is not an issue. 23. Someone who doesn't say the Shema, right? In other words, we're speaking about someone who is not keeping Judaism. And now there might be many people today who don't say Shema every day, and generally that's because majority of people don't say Shema today in America, at least, is because they don't know about it or they don't know how important it is. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about now people who deliberately don't say the Shema. In other words, the Shema is I accept there's one God, and they've thrown that out the window. I'm not interested in one God. God forbid. Or they publicly transgress the Torah. And again, we're not talking about people today. Most people today do many things is because they didn't have the proper Jewish education, or they don't understand the importance. Likewise, if there's someone that he does things in the privacy of the home, he's Yetzirah got him. He's it's obviously not. It's not proper, but that's not someone who's left the Judaism, but someone who's publicly doing things, showing I publicly don't care. Judaism means nothing to me. I mean, I feel funny saying it, but that's what public transgression means. So such a person, Einem Estarf the Zuman, they cannot join this group for the introduction, because how can they bless God? This person is deliberately rebelling against God. It's ludicrous. That's number one. Ger Gomer. Now, a convert who's completed the conversion, Mistarf the Zuman, he can. Now, you might say it's obvious, right? A convert is like a Jew, 100%. But the reason that we're mentioning it is because well, for a lady, it doesn't make a difference. The lady's going to go to mikveh, and that's her conversion process. Well, she's going to accept the mitzvahs. She has to accept mitzvahs upon herself and go to mikveh. A man, though, what happens is, first he has a bris. And if he's having the bris as part of the conversion, we even say a bracha. And so in a certain respect, he's become part Jewish. But if he's had a real bris, before he can go to the mikveh, has to heal. He has stitches and all kinds of things. So we wait for him to heal, and then he goes to the mikveh. So what we're saying here is a convert who had the bris but did not yet go to the mikveh, so he's like a quasi-Jew, so to speak. He can't join in. He can't join in the mezumin yet. But once he's a ger gomer, he's completed the conversion process, then it's start the zimun. Now he can join in, being in this form invitation. Not only he can join in to answer, he can even lead. And you might think, well, obviously he can lead. He's a regular Jew. No, but what does the leader say? They say, because you've given our forefathers a heritage. In other words, Israel, our ancestors. And since he technically, his parents weren't Jewish, so you might have thought that he can't say that, but he can. Why can he do that? Because as we have said about Avram, our forefather Avram, Ki av hamoin goyim nasaticho, I have made you a father, a multitude of nations. Right? When he changed his name from Avram to Avraham, that's what it means. V'darshinon, and our oral tradition expounds on this. Shlo ava haya avla aram. In the past, in other words, while he was still only Avram, he was only a father to one nation, to Aram. Right? Because Avram was Av Aram, the father of Aram. In other words, he was the spiritual mentor of his place of birth. And from this point onwards, he becomes the father, in other words, the spiritual mentor, the spiritual guide to all nations. So a convert, this is why someone who converts, we call them Ben or Bas, Avram, and Sarah. right? It's like Avram and Sarah, the spiritual parents. So that's how it works. Okay, that's chapter 45. Any questions? Oh, all right. Siman Memvav, chapter 46. Hilchos Machos Asuros. This is the halachas of forbidden foods by Memvav Sifim, and there are 46. Right, it's a long one. We can discuss a lot of things over here. So before we do that, I want to give a little bit of introduction. So of course, we have a legalistic aspect of kashrus, right? These, and we're going to learn the laws. These things are kosher, these things are not kosher, etc. However, it goes deeper than this. There's a cute parable, right? So someone they buy a shirt, and the shirt on the label there's care instructions. It says only wash in cold water. Don't put in the dryer. Hang it up to wash, whatever it is. Hang it up to dry. And the guy looks at it and he says, "What a chutzpah! I paid them a fortune for this shirt, and now they're telling me what I can do and can't do with it. It's not their shirt anymore. It's my shirt now. I'll do what I like with it." So he washes in the hot water, then he puts it in the dryer. Yeah, and when it comes out, it's a different color and 6 sizes smaller. Doesn't work anymore. So it's not a punishment. It's just very simple. The person who designed it, or the company, whatever it is, the person designed it, they know what its materials are. They know what's good for it. They know what's not good for it. And they're guiding you how to best take care of it. It's a care instruction. And so on a similar note, Hashem, the creator of our souls, has given us care instructions. If we want our souls to be spiritually sensitive, kosher food. Now, obviously, there's 613 mitzvahs, and every mitzvah has an effect on our spiritual sensitivity. But nothing can be more damaging to a person's spiritual sensitivity than non-kosher food. And often people come and say, like I got a shul, or I do this mitzvah, that mitzvah. It doesn't do anything for me, right? So even if the people who keep kosher on some level, what they often find is when they start keeping higher levels of kashrus, their heart starts to open up, so to speak. Right? They become more sensitive. For our soul to be properly cared for, this is Hashem's care instructions. If you want your soul to be spiritually sensitive and to bring things in, then this is what we need to do. Okay, so we're going to discuss a lot of things over here. So first thing we're going to discuss is blood, but not blood, right? Blood meaning you can't shecht an animal, or if it's even worse, if you didn't kill it, you can't start drinking cups of blood. Right? Blood is prohibition, because the soul, so to speak, is in the blood. Now, everything in the physical world is a reflection of the spiritual worlds, as we discussed many times before. And the fact that the blood travels around the body and brings the nutrients and the oxygen physically to all the various parts of the body is because it's the physical manifestation of the animal part of the soul, the part of the soul that brings life, the spiritual life force around the body. So the soul, on a certain level, resides, or it's manifested in the blood, and therefore we can't have blood. So, okay, we know we can't start draining animals of their blood and drinking it. Well, now in number one, we're going to have something a little more subtle. Dam hanimsa bebeitza osa. Blood that's found in eggs is prohibited. Now, I just want to point out that the blood it's talking about here is not the blood that 99% of the time we find in our eggs. In other words, today we have non-fertilized eggs, generally speaking. You can go to certain farms and they have roosters and everything, maybe in small, and the eggs are fertilized. But generally speaking, if you buy commercially, from a supermarket or something, the eggs are not fertilized. So it's a totally different ballgame. So the eggs that we're talking about here is a fertilized egg, which means what is the blood? It's starting to develop into a chick already. That's the blood that is the real issue. The blood that we have today is normally just unfortunately the birds are not kept very healthily. They're often locked up in little coops, and sometimes there's a bit of blood in the egg. So we still can't have the blood itself, but it doesn't really affect the rest of the egg. But we've accepted upon ourselves to be strict, and we throw out the whole egg anyway. But definitely there are people, came from poorer. Today in the Western world, Baruch Hashem, we live quite a high standard of living. But people who lived in Eastern Europe, they came from Eastern Europe, they used to often remove that blood spot and keep it. Anyway, blood that's found in an egg, we're talking about fertilized blood, is it was not fertilized. The blood itself is forbidden. The palmim kolabeitza surah, sometimes when you find blood in it, the entire egg is not kosher. And therefore, when you're making food with eggs, you have to check the eggs to make sure there's no blood in it. So generally speaking, you crack the egg into another container or something before you pour it in, and you check the egg and make sure that it is blood free. All right. So we'll run out of time for today. It's good to be back. Thank you, everyone. Those people who sent messages is greatly appreciated. Nice that you thought of me. And only simchas. I'm gonna post probably next week because I have to get the right version. Making another wedding coming up, so let's focus on the simchas. God willing, in about 6 weeks. It's gonna be in Phoenix this time. Last time was in Florida, so it was possible for some people to come. But if anyone's looking for an excuse, especially people in Florida want to get out of the cold Florida weather instead of come to Phoenix.
We're Phoenix.
Yeah.
Rabbi,
So
I didn't send you a message, but I was thinking of you.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah. So those anyone who's looking for an excuse to come, be honor if you can join us. So we should have for next week already we're doing electronic invitations. It's the way of the world. No one prints anything anymore. My daughter's like, print an invitation? What are you talking about?
Is this during Yeshiva week?
It's not going to be during Yeshiva week, the wedding. Oh,
not the Yeshiva week.
No, it's going to be.
How about Sheva Brachos?
It's going to be. The wedding is going to be February, I think the 25th of February.
February 25.
It's the 27th of Shvat.
The Shah Taiva.
So
How come?
I understand it's not always practical to travel into the state, but anyone who can and would like to would be very welcome.
Thank you.
All right. So we'll wish everyone a wonderful week. And we should only share simchas, God willing.
Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi.
I remember my father would always say, in terms of kashrus, you look to see what happens, how a person reacts to a fly that falls into his cup of wine, A rich person looks down and throws away the fly and throws away the wine. An average person plucks the fly out and then drinks the wine. But an ani, a poor ani, Nebuch, he reaches in, squeezes the fly a little bit, and then he drinks the wine. Shkaya.
Delicious.
Have a great week, all.